All right, Alex.
What you seeing?
I got 122 flag, 107 front, uphill. I'm excited to share with you a lot of the lessons I've learned on the golf course to make you not only a better golfer, but a golfer that people are going to enjoy playing with more.
I missed it 4 feet to the left.
You know that? That was like how I thought.
Hello, friend. My name is Scott Epstein, also known as Scottie the Caddy, and welcome to the Links and Lifestyle Podcast. I'm thankful to be here and grateful that you're taking the time to listen. If you notice over my shoulders, I have a couple of chairs. We're getting the studio set up for our interviews. Stay tuned for that. That's going to be exciting. We're trying something a little different this week. I'm not reading directly from a teleprompter. We're going to have more of a free flow to it. I have my laptop here just to my side where I'm going to refer to. So I want to highlight 3 significant events that happened in my life in the early part of April. So let's tee it up, let's have some fun, and let's dive in. So the first one is April 5th. April 5th every year. April 5th is when my father was born, Philip Epstein, also known as Bubba, my dad. Dad at one point weighed over 300 pounds and now weighs about 170. He really turned all of that around. He's always been there for me and has always had my back. Mom as well. My earliest childhood memory and fondest I remember was when I was 7 going to a Jets game. Dad had kept it a surprise. He told me we were going to a Little League banquet lunch of some sort in December. And we made our way up to MetLife, or what was Giant Stadium back then. Got to the parking lot, and I looked at him and said, Dad, is the lunch here? And he's like, no, we're going to the Jets game. So we went, they won, which is a rare occurrence. And I can attribute that time to the reason I am a long-suffering Jets fan. He was always a caring and loving father, went to our games, coached, and was just always there. Him and Mom provided more than enough for us. Back then we were not a big I love you family, but it was a house with a lot of love. And we are an I love you family now, which is really neat. They live in Boynton Beach, down at Del Boca Vista, as we like to say, with the Seinfelds and the Costanzas. In fact, Melissa, with her cricket machine, made a really cool T-shirt for them alluding to that. They left New Jersey in 2016 and have not looked back. We see them quarterly. They're very active in our lives, and we're very blessed to have them. And that's the lesson I want to share. I'm 48, and I'm getting older. They're getting older, but they're still alive. Many people my age, through high school and other networks that I have lost parents. And I'm very present to the fact that we're very blessed to have them still around. And those of you that do have them still around, make the time. Be loving, be patient. Next up, April 11th, 2024. I got to go to the Masters. Little backstory, my closest friend down here, John, who I saw a couple weeks prior to that, stopped by, for a hug and a chat, had 2 badges right on his counter. And I said, John, what are these? And he said that he had them for the week, and through some high-level negotiating and 2.5 months, less than 2.5 months after getting baptized, I believe Jesus had a role in these tickets landing in my orbit and in my world, our world. I had 2 badges for Thursday morning, the first half of the day. So I got to give my brother a call about 9 days before the event and said, Greg, our dream is coming true. All you got to do is fly down here, and we're going to Augusta. So we went. It was incredible. We had some weather challenges. There was a possibility of our sector of the day being rained out. It wasn't. And whether you're a golfer or not, it truly is a magical place. People talk about the undulations, the hills, just the azaleas. There's no words to describe what that experience was like. It was incredible. On that same date, I had dodged a couple voicemails from one of my 2 closest friends from college. It was very out of character for him to be calling. And he let me know that my 4-year roommate and best friend from college, Raymond, had passed away. Raymond had some issues with alcohol and blood clots and just hard living. We had a great relationship. We stayed in touch. We saw each other periodically, and one of the people that I had some of the best memories and simplest time of my life, which was at college in Florida, had passed away. And it was really sad. I think of Raymond often. He's got a couple kids. My kids knew of him, wedding party, bachelor parties, all of it. Today, he's still a part of our lives. Back then in college, our two main games were backgammon and Wayne Gretzky hockey on Nintendo 64. I used to beat him in backgammon, and he held me in hockey. He beat me more than I beat him. But in backgammon, the worst roll on the board is a 2 and a 1. And Raymond used to throw that a lot. And back then, we called it a Raymond. Fast forward to today, my family, we're a big backgammon and Monopoly family, and we call a roll of 2-1 a Raymond. So I always smile fondly when one of the kids or I throw it and someone says, Raymond. So that's pretty neat. The lesson I want to take from all of that is stay in touch with people that had great impact or memories in your life. It's definitely one of my strengths and something that's important and, like anything else, requires effort. Last up, April 7th, 2025. That was the day a decision was made around a job I really wanted. So in February of 2025, my boss at Secession, the caddy master, announced that he was retiring. I talked previously about Greg Crum. He was the original caddy master there. He passed away in 2022. And Walt, who was terrific in his own ways and, was a stopgap, was a little up there in his age, announced in Feb of 25 that he was retiring. So, the job had to be filled, and it was a role that I wanted. So the first round interview was in early March, and my second round was going to be on April 1st, which was a Tuesday. So that weekend we had to go to New Jersey. We got to go to New Jersey for a bar mitzvah, my nephew's bar mitzvah. And one of the highlights of that weekend was running into my AA sponsor. We stayed in touch periodically, not super often, but we were still in relationship, and I ran into him and got to introduce him to my son. And he was the guy that walked me through the steps. And part of the life I'm living today would not be the same if not for him. And I still get goosebumps talking about it. So the caddy master process, I threw the kitchen sink at it. Our director of golf, Corey, who I consider a friend, we go to church together, was one of the decision makers in the process. PowerPoint presentation, thank you notes all along the way. I had bound something for the final round and provided it to all four people that I met with. What I lacked in actually overseeing a golf operation, which is a lot of what the job actually entails, I tried to lean into my Wall Street experience, network marketing experience, owning a vending business experience, the relationships that I had built and had with my coworkers and members there. I knew I was running against some external candidates that had gold star and gold plate resumes and backgrounds, which we'll come back to. But I threw the kitchen sink at it. Quick side note, one of the caddies I work with, who's a gem and one of my favorites, the week we were waiting on the decision, just came up to me in the caddy barn and he said, Scott, and back then I was a big gambler, he said, Scott, I'll bet you $15,000 you don't get the job. And my boss, Jimmy, knows this story. And I looked him dead in the eye and I said, thank you for your support. And he and I have a chuckle about that every time I see him. I told him I would talk about it. So April 1 was the last round. It was a 4-person interview. In my Wall Street career, the most people I ever had in a room was 3. It was pretty intense. It was enjoyable. When I finished, I'd gone into my car. I had 4, little notes I was going to write and included little tidbits from the interview experience that I had, provided to them after the final round, the person who was after me. And that was it. The course in April is very busy. So that week the course was busy and we weren't told what was going to happen until the following week. So that Monday, April 7th, I finished my loop at around 12 o'clock and the director of golf, Corey, was waiting and delivered the bad news. They had chosen someone else. He thanked me for the effort and I wasn't shocked, but I was definitely crushed. I put everything into it. In that moment, I thought it was the end of the world. I really did. I'm not going to lie. It hurt. I gave it my absolute best shot. I learned a lot about myself in the process. I leaned into some of the members I was closest with, and they were extremely helpful. And, I gained a lot of visibility and respect amongst, the membership and, other people that were part of the decision-making process. In fact, the process and the challenge ignited parts of me that had been dormant for a long time. So that evening, Monday night, was Basketball Championship Monday, which just occurred this past week. The Gators, my alma mater, were playing Houston in the final game. And so that entire run, and Florida had some games where they were down but came back. We were fighting for Raymond, another fraternity brother of ours who passed away, Frog. His name was Adam, but we called him Frog. And one of my last partying nights in August before getting sober was actually with Adam in New Jersey. And so I was on a text chain with about 10 people, and we were just focused on them fighting for Adam and for Raymond the entire tournament. And so the Gators were down again. They came back. They won. And I was alone with my thoughts when one shining moment, the song came on after they had gotten their trophy. And I just bawled. I lost it for like 10 minutes. I cried and sobbed uncontrollably. I was just letting out, the ending of that process. Two people that were my age that, aren't alive anymore. Raleigh Peters, one of my mentors in life who, was dying of cancer and passed away a couple weeks later. And we'll talk about him in an upcoming podcast in detail. And I just lost it. And what I realized is that, it's not the end of the world, and there's other, there's bigger tragedies than not getting a job that I wanted. I had breakfast a couple weeks later with our director of golf, which brought closure to the process. Got the feedback I wanted. It was good for me. It was good for him. It's always been my experience to get feedback when something doesn't go my way. And let's talk about my new boss. Jimmy is awesome. From the time I met him and from the time he stepped foot on property, things at work have shifted in a very positive way. He's a big personal growth, personal development guy like me. I shared with him all of the things that I presented to management, and frankly, he was doing those at other places already, and is doing things that are built on some of the ideas I had that, frankly, I never even thought of or could have done nearly as well as he has. So, it's been incredible. It's really transformed the community and culture that we have there, and the management team made the right decision, A+. So lessons from disappointment 1 year later. Not getting the job was the absolute best thing that could have happened. I see the time and energy it requires, and I'm grateful that I'm not doing that. In fact, he told me today he jogged 14 miles after working a 10-hour shift at work. Unbelievable. He's a remarkable leader and an even better human being. Links and Lifestyle would not have been created had I gotten the role. I'm certain of that. Absolutely no shot. The boxes, the podcasts, the path and the journey we're on, the people we're meeting and the community we're creating, the time I enjoy at home, the personal growth and focus I'm experiencing. None of that would have happened if I got the job. And everything happens for a reason, and to trust God. Trust God's path and will. Turn it over to God. Let go and let God. He knows a lot more than I do. Proverbs 19:21 states, "Many are the plans in a person's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails." So whether it's a relationship or a job or landing a client or something health related, a door closing is not the end of the world, and in fact leads to doors openings that are going to be much better. If you're enjoying this podcast, I have a small ask. One of my mantras in life is you don't get what you don't ask for. So my ask is like, comment, share, subscribe. Doesn't cost you anything, and it helps the algorithm and the flows and stuff that, frankly, I don't understand. Big finish. Win for the week, challenge, Bible verse. Win for the week. We hosted family all of Easter weekend, and it was amazing. At times, it was very challenging, but I was patient and loving. My in-laws are moving to the Low Country, which is exciting. We're excited to have them down here. They're finally leaving New Jersey. And six-pack summer body is in full effect. Not only have I continued doing nightly abs, but I had made a commitment Feb 22 through Easter not to have any sweets. So no cake, cookie, candy, or ice cream. And Easter was going to be the cutoff. Melissa made her homemade cheesecake, which she makes twice a year, and I didn't have any. So I'm continuing on the path of no sweets. Work is busy, and my body needs to not have sugar. So I consider that to be a big win as well. Challenge, lodging this summer. With my in-laws, knock on wood, moving down here to the low country, I'm not going to be staying with them this summer. So I'm turning that over to God. I've got a few weeks before I need to get serious about that. And I've got a few cards to play, which I'm equally excited about. But, like anything else, it's going to be a challenge, right? There's some unknown around it. I'm not concerned. And that's why God is such a big part of my life. He's got a plan, and whatever that plan is his business, not mine. Lastly, Bible verse. So from Romans 8, verse 28, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. So, few takeaways. Trust in God's plan. We've talked about it. God is working behind the scenes, even when life seems chaotic or painful. Perspective on suffering. Trials and afflictions are not meaningless. I reflect on some of the lowest of lows in my life, and I feed my mind positive stuff constantly. Reels, videos, things I'm reading. I'm very locked into the fact that all of those painful experiences, and there are plenty, and there are more that we're going to highlight, have helped me to be who I am today. That is the truth for all of us. And lastly, his purpose. That's so powerful. I'm part of God's plan, which encourages me to act with hope, obedience, and perseverance. Look to serve others and surrender to his plan. God bless. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next week.